One. Boom. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakian. Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with the two founders of Next Big Thing, Courtney Thomas, Dara and Wilson. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, no. We've got the routine down. We're very good guests.
Awesome. That was good. That was in sync.
Thank you. So what's up?
Thank you very much. It's been a little while since we've seen each other. I'm glad that you're finally on the show.
Yes,
we're
And
very
you guys
excited.
are doing live shows now, which is badass. I love that.
Same location where you are doing your live series as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's a good location, piano fight, it's a good place.
Yeah.
So you guys have done 24 of these episodes where you're highlighting, spotlighting millennials of color across tech, media, politics, entrepreneurship. Why'd you guys have the fire under your ass to do this?
Ooh, great question.
That's a great question. You're looking at me.
I know. I have an answer though.
Go for it.
I always knew that Black women, Dara and me, like Dara and me, we have the ability to make things cool. We know how to make things popular because we naturally are that. And I'm getting to a point here. I think it's cool to really celebrate the everyday heroes, the ones that are working the 9 to 5s. Really, it's like an 8 to 7 type situation.
With the commutes.
With the commutes, if you count it. I love celebrating entrepreneurship because that's what every business is. It started with a single person having an idea, getting a team together. Disney was a startup at one point. So, yeah, just to really funnel that idea of the things that I think are cool, let's highlight it, let's make it what we believe it to be. And we did that.
Yeah, I think when it started, we were on another web series.
Yes.
A friend of ours had a short series called Bottomless, and we sat around drinking mimosas and talking about things. And after that, Courtney and I were like, what if this was live?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if we just got to sit around and like talk about things?
Yeah.
And then when we got together to try to figure out like what a project would look like, we were like, we could do things with all these different people because we know so many cool people doing so many awesome things.
Yep.
And then it was like, that's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to Courtney's point, like we really do have a good eye for who is going to be the next big thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like we tap people and then
They ascend into the heights. We have this, like one of our first spreadsheets we ever made. It's a list of everyone that we just knew personally or knew of in some way, and we said, these are the people that we would want on our show.
Yep.
So many people have literally won awards now.
Great.
They are so shot off into the stratosphere, and we were like, well, wait, we needed that interview from you. We like called this before. So,
Yeah.
good problems to have.
Yeah,
ultimately.
exactly. We essentially have like the list of people who are about to blow up because they all do before we can get our hands on them.
Right. Some of them we do capture just in time.
Yes.
So, yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a race against time. It's fun.
Yeah.
Very similar in that sense. We also bring on people that are kind of ascending through these tech, media, entrepreneurship, politics, and trying to impact the world in a good way. We want to highlight and amplify their voices, get more people inspired about that. Seems like you're doing the exact same thing.
Same.
But you're picking millennials of color
Yes.
specifically as a focus. And really there's much need for this in the world because there's not enough of it, right? Where are the Arabic women of color? Where are the Asian women of color? Where are these groups of people springing up in media shows, highlighting people in their cultures that are crushing it?
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, are there even other ones like you right now out there?
There are, but it's hard to say that they're doing exactly what we're doing.
I don't actually think there is. There are people, I mean, obviously there are plenty of like new media organizations that are focused on Black people or people of color or women or what have you. I don't think there's anybody specifically, at least from what I've seen, I haven't seen anybody else who's specifically dedicated to highlighting like up and comers, like people in that specific spot.
Yeah, I could see that because I definitely see shows that want to focus on millennials and they definitely want to draw millennials. And I see people that obviously focus on like African American lifestyle, Black culture, or any very specific culture. But Dara and I remember with this 3-hour conversation that we had when we were first ironing on our brand, and we were trying to decide, should we just focus this on Black people, or is it just any millennial of color?
And then what was that conversation like?
It was hard. It was a hard conversation because we're very strong individuals who believed so strongly in both of our ideas, and we were both right. Like, there was no wrong answer. And we still end up in a place, I think we just like let it happen naturally. We let our biases just live and flow.
We do have conversations though. Like, I think you kind of had to talk me off a ledge because I was like, there's only Black people on this show, what do we do? And you were like, no, because this person, this person, this person, this person.
Because it was men and women we were talking about.
Men and women and like LGBT representation. Which, like, as we should be more cognizant of those things.
Those are conversations that we have very often. Dara just brought this up. She was like, loving it, everyone's doing a great job, but like, where are people with disabilities? Where are LGBTQ people? Where are trans people? Like, where are these people? And I'm like, you're right. Like, we're just focusing on these like able-bodied, like young, Black, sometimes almost like majority light-skinned Black people, and we have to pay attention to that because if we're trying to be the difference, then we have to actively fight against the default, and it's so easy to fall into.
That's such a good way to put it. You want to be the difference, you have to fight against the default.
You got to fight against the default.
That's good, and it's like being the black sheep in this case with all the white sheep roaming around, going in one direction. How can you be different going in this other direction? And what does that look like? How can you inspire other people to follow a similar path? And so, okay, so now that you've picked Millennials of Color in general, and now you're trying to also diversify neurodiversity, all these other kind of aspects. So I guess you've been now 24 episodes in, you're doing live shows. Out of these conversations that you've had, spotlighting are you mostly sitting down with the people and you're talking to them about what they're building, how they're building it, why that's important? It's usually the conversation. And then you're playful, you're joking around, and the show's great. Links in the bio, of course. You guys all know, links in the bio. And so then out of these 24 episodes, who have been, some of these guests that you featured that have been ones that have really, really made an impact on you and on the audience, and why did they make that impact, do you think?
Right. I just want to add one more thing.
Do it.
Everyone does tell us about what they're working on and definitely what inspires them, and we have fun with them. But the thing that we get all of our guests to talk about is their struggle and their journey. A lot of times,
good. Let's talk about that.
Millennials we are either used or abused by the media. Either they love us and we just popped up out of nowhere like roses from concrete, and we are famous at 17, we weigh 110 pounds, and we are this being of perfection that no one birthed, we just popped onto planet Earth. Or we're ruining the economy, we're taking several businesses out with us, the diamond industry is struggling because we're struggling, come on, see the connection. So
we're not buying houses because we're eating avocado toast, all of these things.
I can't make rent, like I can't make a mortgage, what are you talking about? And so we wanted to focus on these individuals. We want to get them before the media warps their story into, you'll never be this is how amazing they are. We want to just, bring that back down to ground level, have these one-on-one conversations, and hopefully the realness of that struggle is inspiring. Because I don't think anybody necessarily comes on and recommends their path, because it's full of rocks and bumps, if we're being honest. I don't even recommend like my path, but if you find yourself on it, here's one way that one person navigated it and came out the other side.
I also like, I think it was in the conversation we had with Amber.
What do you do while you're waiting?
Yes, what you do when you're waiting for the big break to come. And I also like people being really honest about times in their lives where they were fortunate. I think people talk and lionize hard work as if it's this magical thing that's just gonna make sure that you have success in your life. And can we curse on here?
Of course.
That's bullshit. Like, that's not accurate for literally anybody's story. It's not ever just, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and here I am.
Yeah, nobody's story is like
Nobody's
that.
story like
I don't care
that.
what American Dream tale you've heard.
Like Amber had a friend who was a singer. She's also a singer. She's
Went out on maternity leave, and that's how Amber, she was in the cast of Hamilton that just came to San Francisco.
yeah.
She got that job because her friend
She got
entrusted
a
her.
job as a backup singer for Lauryn Hill because her friend was like, hey, take this job so you don't steal my spot when I come
Right.
back from having this child, essentially. And she got to tour Europe with Lauryn Hill, which is a huge and massive opportunity. There's a level of being ready for your opportunities when they come, like the preparation and the hard work helps with that part.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, she was blessed with a stunningly gorgeous voice, and she knew the right person at the right time.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that she didn't deserve the opportunity that she got, but like those little sparks of things that propel you forward, I think are important to tell people, because or else it just seems like, what am I doing? I'm
Yeah,
like
it
banging
seems
my
like
head against a
impossible.
wall
And
and
that's-
not making any progress.
Yeah, that's that hopelessness that we're not here for. I think that's easy to fall into, especially as millennials age and we get older and we realize that not all of our dreams came true the way that everyone wanted them to.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
hoping to cut down on some of that.
Yeah.
Holy
Trying to
cow.
demystify it a little bit.
Yes, that is so much to unpack even right there. I love it. Okay, so we started out with this, what is going on with the media and how is it affecting young kids that are up and coming? And so there's this, you either become this rose on the sidewalk, sprouted from nothing, dropped on this earth, you're perfect, you already millions of followers, whatever. This is crazy. I'm constantly analyzing LA culture and
Yeah.
like their Instagram life is just nuts
I wouldn't
balls.
look too deep.
Yeah, it's
I don't advise looking too deeply.
it's just even just peeking into like the stories and like all that madness and the conspicuous consumption lifestyle is just it's crazy to me. It's just absolutely nuts. But there's that, or there's this other side of things, which is I think this one's kind of nuts. Is this young people that have something that they're trying to build into the world or push every single day that they're trying to build, and then maybe by the time they're 30 they haven't seen the fruits of their labor yet. And this is continuously happening more and more through people's 20s, and it's not just about just tying your shoes up tight and just going and hustling every single day. There's this stroke of luck, these strokes of good fortune that come with this process. And it's really good that we're really unpacking this, because that's crucial. A lot of success in life now is who you know.
Oh yeah.
And by surrounding yourself with really smart people that are building the future in different ways, you'll get plucked into different to groups and given different opportunities at these times that are just seem to be perfect. And then to have the humility to say that I'm nothing, and I'm also something. It's a paradox, but then there's also the teams of people that we work with that help make it true.
Oh man.
Yeah, I think for my part, my parents hate when I say this, but nothing about me is exceptional. Nearly everything about what I have achieved thus far in life should be totally expected, given that I grew up in a household with two parents who were college educated and had advanced degrees and had their own business.
Same
Like,
exact thing.
Like, oh my God, you went to an Ivy League school? Like, yeah, but I should have done that.
Yeah, that was
Like,
what
I
was
had
set up for you to
all
do.
the resources to be able to do that. I had like the SAT classes and things that other people don't have.
Oh my gosh.
So they're
Yeah.
like, no, Dara, you worked hard. I'm like, I didn't have to work as hard as some people do, though.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I didn't have to go to school hungry. I didn't have food insecurity. I didn't have,
That
a
makes
disability. Like,
difference.
Yeah, correct. Nutrient deficiency for the brain.
Exactly.
Dude, like
Exactly.
being a kid, knowing where your next meal is coming from, like you don't want to do your math homework. You want to figure out how you're going to eat. That's fair. That's more than fair.
Yeah.
It's so true. Opportunity begets more opportunity.
Yes.
And when someone sits there and denies that one opportunity that they may have had access to easier than others, led to what can happen is a snowball effect. Truly, I feel like next big thing is living in a snowball effect right now. Like people are hearing about us and opportunities are coming just one after the other, but they're all coming from this one source. So,
and same thing is like we are paralleling the journey that we talked about other people having, which is like now people are like, oh, hey, like, do you want to look at these t-shirts and maybe we can have them on your shirt? Like, people are just like, oh, you have this thing and it's great. And it's just always been that. And it's like, we've been doing this for years.
Dara, the first time when we were talking about it, was like, this may not be an overnight endeavor for us, Courtney. This may take like 7 years. She referenced Superfruit, which is another YouTube channel that's blown up, of course, but it took years. So to even be doing what we're doing at the 3-year mark, I'm amazed personally. I didn't expect any of this, and it is weird, like when you do keep going, and something just hits at a certain age. Maybe it's 30, maybe it's 32, maybe it's 40. I think we gotta get past the idea of, I hate to say it, but like baby boomers put these like labels on these ages of what you're supposed to have accomplished, and it's just not true, and it's really unhealthy. I think about it as a 30-year-old, like I'm single. What if I don't marry until I'm like 36? Does that mean that my life up until 36 was meaningless? Absolutely not. And I would hate to think that I'm not spending some of my best years and enjoying them fully because of some expectation, some outdated expectation, one that's still not serving anybody.
Well, the economy is literally not set up for you to do those things. So like
to have 0 children, and to not buy diapers, and
right. Like I'm trying to pay my rent. Can you imagine taking care of a human and trying to pay? Like
I'm trying to get this vacation.
Bonkers to me.
That's a disaster in the making, and that's what so many people around the world that fall into poverty. That is the reason why is an early child, and like you said, opportunity begets other opportunities. So if you're not given opportunity in the first place, oh man, let's unpack this a little bit more, because I think this is becoming a constant theme. I was just at the Berkeley College Republicans event, and I went there because Dave Rubin, Charlie Kirk, and Candace Owens were there, and I was there. So let's unpack. So
let's keep unpacking.
Let's unpack. So I went there to challenge them because I didn't think that enough people were challenging them in an analytical and emotionally intelligent way to where it was really resonating with them yet. And I hadn't really seen them take a stage with people that challenge them. Most of the time they're taking stages in echo chambers, and that's true across the board, in many, on the right or on the left. This isn't nothing to do with identity politics. Let's drop identity politics completely out of the equation and just talk about the strict the conversation that's occurring in that location. It's not very open-minded. It's not very nuanced or multivariate. It's very binary, and it's also not very equanimous. It's very agitative, aggressive. And so I was there and I challenged them, and we posted the video on our channel and of the question that I asked, and it was about having more multivariate, nuanced, equanimous, open-minded conversation and what they could do to do that more. And so my reason why I'm bringing this up is because as we unpack the importance of people being able to actually have conversations across the political spectrum, or be like, hey, 18-year-olds have a little bit too much pressure on their shoulders to hit 1 million Instagram followers. There's that you can be successful when you're 40 in whatever way successful means to you. There's all these different ways, and this whole notion of kind of those three, a lot of what they were mentioning at the time was that, you know, you're the author of your life, pick yourself up, go fight, go hustle. They don't really talk that much about opportunity and the importance of giving more people opportunity. It's almost like there's a disconnect between a lot of people that are speaking on those stages and the actual communities of people that lack opportunity, because if they were there observing what lacked opportunity means, then it might resonate a little bit more. And so I think it's just really important to figure out how to bridge that gap in that conversation.
I agree. I gotta tell you, with the names that you just named, I'm not sure if that's the goal. I think it is to be to agitate and to get people riled up in a very emotional place that's not intelligent. And I don't know, like, we can talk about it, but with attitudes like that, with words that hurt more than they help, and seeing the state of things around us, like, you just can't deny that. No one's sitting in a good place in America 2018. Like, no one's skipping down the street and like living their best lives. I'm sorry, even if your tax returns turned out good, I know you are not sitting there living your best life. I know it for a fact. So like, I think I want to add a question, like, how much energy is worth investing in people who are committed to agitating and not solving?
See, that's what I was going to ask something similar, because I don't know how I feel about it. Like, you as a white guy going up, I think I think that like that's a good thing, because we're busy like living in a life of oppression. And I personally, like, if I look at how I spend my energy, that's not going to be on the top of my list.
No, going out to a Republican function to make sure that they hear my perspective as a Black woman, it's not on the list of things to do.
I'm trying to get them to sit on the show so that we can have that conversation.
That's a wonderful
and if it does happen, I think it could change the tides of that polarization that's occurring. And so I want to get to that free thinking middle ground with people that, and again, not identity politics, but just free thinking middle ground. And I hear what you're saying, to not prioritize going and talking to people that are absolutely in this other realm of thought that might be agitative and stuff. But at the same time, there, interestingly enough, are aspects of what was said in that room that are very important. So, interesting life, like, we can't just say that nothing that was said in that function is good, because it's not true. There were actually good things said in that room as well. But there were also things that were said that were, I thought, not exactly forward thinking in many ways. And so I'm enjoying bringing this up with you, because I actually, in our sit down with Jordan Peterson, talking about this whole competence hierarchy and how people that achieve more competence in the world end up gaining more economic reward from that world. And then I asked him about what holds people back from climbing up that. What are these factors? These classisms factors, racism, isms, all these isms. What are these things that hold people back? And it was very clear that they are not ready to have that conversation.
That's so deep, because it's so clear what's holding people back. I mean, we've been marching and protesting and asking for clean drinking water, jobs, education, lack of brutality. All those things, that's it. And that's a hard conversation to have when you're complicit in the systems that keep those things churning. Keep it going. That's where the conversation is hard.
I think you're right, and I think it's way more comfortable to live in, like, again, this is where I get back to like the myth of hard work. And if you are living in this capitalistic system and truly believe that with hard work you can do anything, that means that people who have less than can be blamed for their poverty.
Yes.
And the second that you throw that myth away and uncover the fact that people have been given different kinds of opportunities based on who they are and where they were born, then it throws everything else into question. And I think that level of just bringing confusion to the worldview is overwhelming.
Yeah, it makes you call into question every
single
bit
thing.
of privilege. But that's why I love that you and I really talk about our privileges as Black women. Like, we all have privileges. If you can hear me and you have access to the internet and to a screen, you have a privilege that others don't. If you can read, that is a privilege. If you know where your next meal is coming from, those are privileges. So I'd love to have the conversation that basic, so then we can have a conversation about a college education. That's usually where you start to get a little pushback from people. I remember high school debate, affirmative action, high school was mostly white, St. Ignatius College Prep, whoop whoop. And this girl really went up there and said, you know, affirmative action, what it does is takes away our slots. And it was a young white man who was able to counter her and say, see, the thing we're trying to get you to understand is that was never just your slot. Everybody has equal rights to it, and it doesn't automatically belong to you, young woman who's coming up in Marin County. Like, it's just, that's a hard thing to bear. So then when you talk about jobs and all the things that people do put work into, but don't realize that it is their privilege to have that access to that work, shit, a job is a privilege. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like, we in America don't really like to work that much, but realistically, that's all we got. But what if there's a place where there's no jobs available and you want to work and you want to feed your family and you can't do it?
Like in Nigeria right now, it's the 4 out of every 10 people are unemployed or underemployed right now. Right. And that's a massive stat. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's not 4 out of 10 people don't want to work. It's there's not an opportunity. There's no economy. Correct. There's nothing there. Like,
and they really want to work. They want to do something.
Imagine if Amazon announced they were going to open up a headquarters in Nigeria. I'm sure we would see a village and a community build up around that because there's a job now. There's
or
places.
Alibaba now as well. Yeah.
All of it. Exactly. Wherever did Amazon announce where they're building their next headquarters?
It's going to be, I think it's going to be Denver or Austin, I think.
And I think it's really important to know. And
it will come in Africa soon, though, because they're the next ones for toothbrushes, toothpaste, underwear, socks, the next one for
There's nothing but opportunity in Africa. That's like that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, it's really about that globalization thing that you're always talking about, that globalization thing. We all want the same things. We all have the same needs. We just have different access to opportunities and wealth.
Yeah. So we were unpacking, now we're unpacking opportunity more. I love this. I love unpacking opportunity because it seems as though that is this key to the equation for every single person. What are the opportunities that they have as they're growing up, and what potentially holds them back from gaining those opportunities, getting raised in a household that has one parent, or being in a household where the parent makes less than $20,000 a year. These in the US. And so I like how you break it down by meal. I think meal is something that's very relatable for entrepreneurs.
Because sometimes we don't know.
Because sometimes we don't know when the next meal's coming.
You gotta hustle.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
It's funny because I think what we're circling around is like, what's the reason that people so vehemently fight against their own best interest? Like when you go into a room like that and there are people in the world who are struggling and are voting for people who are giving tax cuts to banks. Like, that's the reality. Right. Like you're ushering in an era of your own economic demise.
Because it sounds nice. Because it gets you emotionally wrapped up. Because
as long as there's somebody else that's lower than you, you're like doing okay, right? This is like, there was a time, a very short time, where like poor white people and black people were like fighting on the same lines. And then how do you drive a wedge in there, right? You inflate the racism, because then you can say, it doesn't matter how poor I am, at least I'm not black.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of your decision making is based off of that paradigm, which means like you should be voting with the black people. We want all the economic, we want all of the programs that are gonna help you succeed more than they even help us succeed. Like, you talk about affirmative action helps white women more than it helps black people on the whole.
I think there's something ultimately trendy about the privileges and the supremacy and the racism. Because I see it happen even in my own life. Like, I know friends that have voted for Trump, but I'm like, you're literally sitting across from me. Like, I'm like target number 1 for the Trump administration. I'm loud, I'm black, I'm a woman, I've had an abortion. Like, what else do you want from me? And like, I don't know, like, I just think about other circumstances, like institutions that I've been in, and like, I don't know if I told you, but I just found out my graduate school is in fact going through a lawsuit for racism. And
this is the face of me being shocked.
Right, it's not a surprising fact. The only thing that's surprising is who I'm hearing is bringing the suit, because there was a time where he wasn't fighting so vehemently. And it was kind of, I remember seeing this faculty member like being in good with the very same people that he's now accusing of this racism. But it's as fleeting as favor. And it's a system that was never designed for anyone to actually win. Racism does not actually believe that white people are better. Racism believes that white people believe that they are better and more privileged and deserving of whatever it is that day, whether it's the boss's favor, whether it's being talked to nicely, whether it's getting customer service at the store. It's wherever you are that day. And usually whenever somebody finds themselves on the opposite side, which you will, because it's a tricky system. It's not, right? It's like,
especially when doing stand-up in Oakland.
Depending on the day, your racist compadres may not find you to be what they're going for that day.
Let's do an example. So the opposite example is when you go into a culture outside of the United States, or even in the United States for that matter. So you're a white person, you go to Asia, and you're in Asia.
Oh no, I'm talking about amongst your own.
I want to just tie people into the exact opposite side of the thinking, so that way people are like, oh, it's not just all of this thought, because this is a major part of it.
Yeah.
This same sort of thinking occurs in this opposite part of the world, where maybe somebody in Latin America or Africa or Europe is visiting Asia. And then when you get to Asia, you realize that, oh, people are actually treating me differently because that kind of a thing.
Yeah, that happens.
And then when you visit South America, or if you visit Africa, or wherever you visit across the world, it changes. And so this is a very dynamic thing. This is
that's a good point.
Yeah. And so I love bringing up this dynamicism within people and culture, and these unconscious biases that we have towards one another across the world in these different settings, and how it changes. And so it's different even from San Francisco to Oakland, and we're right next to each other.
Right.
And so, all right, so now that we made that example, so as we come back to this idea of like opportunity and this idea of like climbing up and these things that hold us back along the way, if we're not able to openly talk to people across the political spectrum about what's going on as people try and climb up and make impact in the world, and what is potentially holding them back, or what even unconsciously is occurring that's holding people back, then it's not just like everybody is saying now, especially conservative people are saying, or classic liberal people are saying now, which is that it's all about you. You have every opportunity. You're in the U.S.
I know.
You can totally.
You're living in the past.
Yeah, you're living in the past. It's important to balance these things out, because as much as that is true, that 2018 and being in the U.S. it's a good place to be in the world, better than any other year in the past. But at the same time, there are still these things that are holding people back, and that's why I find myself as a free thinker, because I really care a lot about unpacking this conversation and figuring out how to help maximize, especially the potential of children that are 5 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, that are really trying to get in to find their creative potential and to not be squashed, and to not have people turn them down all along the way, but actually bring them up. So this is really exciting to unpack with you, and I'm really happy that we ended up venturing into this, because I feel like you two represent a movement for people to care more about millennials of color across these impactful industries, and highlighting them, spotlighting them. That's why I vibe. That's so much why I vibe.
So much vibe.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, we were going
and
deep.
that's why you didn't pick anybody on the show. That's why you picked Millennials of Color. That's why you picked that, because that is so important to you, to make sure that it gets louder in the world.
Right, and we could have a more nuanced conversation, because usually when we're reading articles about millennials, we're pretty sure they're only talking about white millennials. Like,
they're talking about their own kids.
Right.
This is the reality. Like the writer is like, I'm angry with my son. He lives in my basement, and I'm gonna write an opinion piece in the New York Times and blame all of them. They're not talking about.
They're not talking about
us.
And even Joe Biden has come out and talked about like millennials. I don't even like hear them. They're not serious.
And he shook his fist at the clouds and told everybody to get off his lawn.
It
was great.
But what about that millennial of color, whether they've been tackling racism since 9/11, or what if they're just like walking out on the street and experiencing police brutality. You don't want to hear from that person in terms of what technological advancement they're working on, what app they're building, like how they made it to school. You don't want to hear about their student loan debt so that you can potentially take that risk off, like you can take that away from them.
Right.
You don't want to hear that story. Then why are you talking at all? If you only want to hear from white millennials, then talk about that. Make that clear. But don't bring us all into the fold for your own gain, because it's not working. It's just not working. Every time I see one of those articles, I post it on our Twitter, and I'm like, so just so you know, like your facts are off here, and this is why. So just let us know if you want to talk about it further. It's so silly.
I mean, just like everything else, the conversation is so much more interesting when you acknowledge the diversity. And there's diversity in millennials, just like there's diversity everywhere else, just like there's diversity inside millennials of color. Like there's all kinds of groups that are underrepresented. And I mean, Courtney and I love hearing ourselves talk. So this is like a nicer way of doing that
It is actually.
than just being like, hello, and listen to what I have to say.
Because we would be doing this anyway, whether or not we had the show.
Right.
It's just nice we have a platform in which to funnel all of this energy.
Literally, like, you could just roll a camera in front of me at any time, and I'm just talking.
We're
talking
normally
to the
having
dog.
like our weekly syncs, and I'm just like, we need to just be recording this at this point, because it ends up in these like conversations at large, and I'm like, everyone needs to hear this.
Yeah.
Or at least put it out there for digital consumption at some point, and a digital record as well
Exactly.
of the moment and moments in time that you had together.
Exactly.
I can't reiterate how important it is to be able to sit down and have these more multivariate discussions, unpacking layers of thought, not just binary, one way or the other way.
Yeah.
Because that's gravity, and I mentioned that in this video, when I was challenging them at Berkeley, is that's something like gravity. That's like the molecular composition of water. Those are very objective, binary things.
Right.
And to say that with immigration or with these or with diversity or healthcare that it can be binary, you have a trillion layer onion that you're trying to say is just apparently binary now.
Yeah.
I don't know how many science classes the people that you're referring to have taken, though, honestly. Okay, so I will say,
That's an interesting point.
I will engage in these free thinking conversations, but I'm pretty cut and dry in terms of what I think we should be doing to move forward.
Can I
into the
hear?
next phase.
Can I hear the?
First of
The
all,
secession plan.
Dara has heard it before. So I'm at the point now where I'm actively encouraging California's politicians to just pack it in and let's secede from the union. And here's why.
Here's why the FBI has us on a watch list.
Probably. They would want us to. That's fine. I look amazing.
That's fine.
I look
Watch
amazing.
me.
Watch me. But the only reason, because there are some conversations that we really have moved past, like Black people are humans. Brown people in general are humans. Those are conversations in some parts of this country where it's still up for debate. Question mark. Even if you have a job where your job is to service someone and they happen to be of color, people will leave it up to their own minds if they're going to give them service that day or not. We have more fish to fry. We're over here trying to figure out how we're going to get these homeless people up off the street without simply displacing them. We want to heal them from their mental illness and their drug addiction. Like, that's a conversation that has to be unpacked because we have people that we need to consider. I don't have time to sit here and debate with you whether or not I'm going to go get this abortion when I just got accepted to graduate school at a top 5 university. I'm not having that conversation. And it goes back to that thing about energy. Like, energy is very finite in my body, in my human little body. It is not going to be here forever. It will only last to the day it's supposed to last. So I'm very conscious of how I use my energy, keeping in mind the goals that we have, especially with a small business. Like, we're just 2 people, it's just us. So like, I don't know, I really just think secession would be a really good answer and everyone should live their truths. And then I think we should build a wall between California and the rest of the country. And I think we should let everyone live the life that they say will be best. And let's see where we're at in 10, 15 years.
Let me lean this way so I'm like not in the shot.
Let's see where we're at. Because I guarantee you, shit is gonna be running a fucking muck on the other side of that wall where they're still having conversations from the 1960s.
Did you not watch Black Panther?
Wakanda.
We cannot wall ourselves off and not help the other people. We can't hold our resources to ourselves.
Sure we can.
Okay, and that is the forever liberal, that's the cycle that liberals have gotten themselves into. They have
Also,
the
I
bleeding
think
hearts.
you are way too optimistic about California.
Oh, I know. I'm just trying to prove a point. At this
Okay,
point,
'cause
it's like, let me just show you the comparison slice, like the split screen of like, this is what's happening in California where we're like trying to, I don't know, do universal like income.
Yep.
And this is where we are. I'm not going to name a state, but you already know. Let's just call it Florida. And like, they're really.
I'm not gonna name a state.
Let's just call it Florida. And like, you know, like high schoolers and college students are like really struggling to even find like a legal abortion clinic. And like, let's see how that plays out over 10 or 15 years. I guarantee you the result is not good because we've already been here. So that's my binary solution for world domination.
I don't foresee that happening.
Of course not. No one's gonna listen to me. It's awful.
I do.
Thank you, Ron.
I'll go. Sign me up.
Thank you.
I don't know what the answer is. I think, I can't remember the name of the paradox. It's like when you know very little about something, you have a lot of overconfidence about your
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I live in that space where I know just enough to know I don't know anything. And it's like a really humbling space to live in, where like everybody around me is very smart.
Amen.
Comfortable. I just
It's
had a
like,
visual.
I'm just like going through the world being like, damn, this is really complicated. I get why this is hard. Like these questions, yeah, this is real complex stuff.
You're polar opposites in that answer.
We are the polar opposites in everything,
In
and
a lot
that's
of
what makes
ways.
this work. Every
That
way.
was so good.
Every way.
I've never heard a more polar
You
opposite
say every
partner
way,
answers.
and I say nuh-uh. Not every way.
Every way, we're both black.
That's not what I was
kidding,
gonna say. We're in a fight. You just witnessed.
No, you just witnessed
'Cause
what
I-
makes Courtney and Dara so special.
I value your mind trying to figure out the solution, but I do side more with Dara on the because I am. But I do side with you on trying to figure out the solution.
Yep.
But by going so analytical of the whole world, I'm just like, this is too complicated.
complicated.
This
It
is too
gets really
complicated.
complicated.
It probably isn't solved as easily as saying California is more progressive, so let's do the California thing.
I
It's
think
really
that
difficult.
there are some ways and some complications that can be eliminated faster than others. Just gonna leave it at that.
Ron, what do you think over there?
Just, Dara's a little MLK and Courtney's a little Malcolm X. And that's
That's the first time we ever gotten that switch around.
that's how I see it.
I'm a little bit Malcolm. You're a little Martin K.
Let's do
At
that.
the risk of getting myself in trouble,
She's officially the Malcolm X of the group.
I am not the Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Because in this situation, yes, I see how you could make that division because you're just like, fuck it, let's get out of here. Which actually makes you more like Marcus Garvey, but let's not split hairs. But like when you talk about like going to Berkeley and doing all this work and like how do we figure out all this stuff, I very much am like, y'all figure that shit out.
And let me know.
Let me know when you got it because I'm over here trying to live. And like,
It's so hard.
if you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy, like part of getting like trying to get people to be more
have the basic
intellectual is like,
physiological
The basic
needs
needs.
met.
you have to
yeah.
have clean water to drink, and this is the United States, and there are plenty of people who don't. You have to like not have lead paint in almost all of the walls in Philadelphia that is actually stopping kids from having successful neurological development in
And can
poor
we
neighborhoods.
Oakland into this? I just saw this beautiful mural painted under an underpass with a homeless person just sleeping right underneath it. And I'm like, y'all, city, guess what? You can beautify this underpass as much as you want, but I will never not see the human being that doesn't have a home or a roof over their
Right.
head. There's no amount of paint that's gonna beautify that.
Right. And so in many situations, I'm very much like, as a Black person and as a woman, there's so much emotional labor expected of me, and I'm not fucking doing it. Like, if I have a choice, I won't do it. Like, even at work, I am a digital marketer. My job is to market things digitally. But when it's time for lunch to arrive, who needs to greet the people? Like, when it's time to answer the door, when it, like, just like the little things that you do to take care and make sure everything is going smoothly in the world, that's like women's work. And I'm fucking over it. So even though I do it a lot of times, and that's on me, when there's other situations where I feel like I'm not gonna take it on, I'm not gonna do it.
Girl, can we talk about even when sometimes when you don't do something, people see that as an action or a move? Girl, not you, you're a man. But yeah, that's the emotional labor where everyone can read into you, and even if you are just standing still and trying to remove yourself from a situation, you got an attitude. You doing all kinds, you doing the most. What you don't want to, it's a lot.
There's a lot of like you just being alive in the world and people throwing their projections on you.
Oh, all day long.
So let's revisit this one more time. Let's also see this as not only this competence and this economic climb, but let's also see it as the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if the bottom physiological needs, I'm looking through it. If those base physiological needs are not being met across the world, not even just the US, but the world, in all these different places, then that in itself impedes the ability for creative development, for trying to make an impact in the world, because then we're focused on the meal or the clean water or shelter, all that. And so that seems to be this first, I think, most humane point of where we can start with the conversation. And it's not to say immediately just go and start funneling wealth down the income hierarchy so that way it can be provided to people.
I am saying that.
With some financial literacy.
Yeah, let's unpack this, because I think we're about to get to a point of AI and robotics that is going to kind of put us into a tipping point of UBI, universal basic income, and there should be some sort of literacy associated with, you are being given $1,200 a month now, and you appropriate maybe 75% of that for rent, maybe 15% of that for food.
Wow,
et
that's
cetera.
all of it.
You got 10%
You got
left.
10% for your life. Good job.
Yeah. So exactly. So it's tough because that number was very San Francisco-esque versus
right, and that
different.
should be a factor as well. Where are you living
at?
and what are the housing costs?
And so so this is this multivariate conversation. But the first and foremost thing, and it seems to be, would you guys agree to this? I asked this question, that your life outcome being associated with your zip code. Are you familiar with the literature, right?
I've heard of this theory. Explain it a little bit, though.
Just that if you're born in Pacific Heights in San Francisco, you are much more likely to end up being like your parents that own a house in Pacific Heights, etc.
Right.
Versus if you're born in a zip code where there's 700 homicides a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everyone's renting, so no, you probably aren't going to go into some home ownership. It's like things like that. So then you think about what's going on in that, for the base physiological needs for the person in Pac Heights versus the person in Southside Chicago, and you can literally immerse yourself in the shoes of what it would be like to be each one of those people, and then to say, are the opportunities really equitable? Right.
Are they? The answer is clearly no. And so we're not saying equal outcomes for everybody. We're saying equal opportunities for people, and how do we actually get there? And so just unpacking that basic physiological needs and this roll of the dice. So this is how I compare it. It's a roll of the dice. If your dice are rolled and you end up in Southside Chicago versus if your dice are rolled you end up in Pac Heights, that is a significant life outcome difference. And if we truly believe in a roll of the dice and humanity in general, how can we decide to purchase a third boat instead of go and try and hire 50 people to solve a problem in the world. And so that's kind of this conversation that I've been trying to have on the show. And I'd just like to maybe hear your thoughts, this roll of the dice. How could you not try and solve these basic physiological needs for other people on this planet? Shouldn't it be a fire under all of our asses? Are they just not spiritually enlightened enough to get that? What's going on?
Again, we've talked about like this vested interest in keeping your idea of the world safe. And I think there's not a fire because people don't believe it. Like it's the reason that we still have to fund studies to say if you're born in a certain zip code, you're gonna have like poor life outcomes, because people are still like, I don't know, let me see the facts.
I don't think you've been on drugs. You have weed in your pocket?
Yeah, exactly. It's because if you believe in this myth of hard work, then people who are impoverished are at fault. And you have to break that idea before you get people motivated to do anything. And that's
hard.
That's hard, and it's true across the board. I mean, like, that idea lives in my head somewhere. It's still back there, and it's something I have to actively think about, talk about, and fight against, because we all have these biases. You know, a well-socialized person is a person who learns the norm of their societies, right? Those are our norms. That's what we've been taught. That's how we function in the world. So it's hard to, like, I don't know, take the red pill or whatever, and like look back and see how things are actually going on.
You've been living in a designed matrix,
Yeah.
And I don't have the answer on a global level, because I know for myself, it was something that I was made very aware of, the roll of the dice, if you will. It was not something that I was fully aware of until I got to college, until I understood just how different people's dice could land. But then mixing that with knowing that my parents, we don't come from generational wealth because my family is directly descended from slaves. We come from Florida, so I'm not just insulting Florida for fun, it's my family. But, you know, Louisiana and Texas, like, slave trade happened right there. And so, you know, coming from a house where it was a 2-parent household, you know, parents stayed married till death did them part, and I had an education because they said to me, you can go to college or you can get a job and go to college, and those are your options after you turn 18. So when you have that mindset, you know, being drilled into you from about the age of 6, it's a privilege. It's truly a privilege. I loved the way that I was raised, and you have to go out into the world and really come to terms with that, especially as a Black person, as a Black woman. I could be the exact same person that I am, same looks, have the same ideas, but if I were living on any other side of this world right now, my circumstances could be vastly different, just like that.
We haven't even talked about pretty privilege.
Honey, pretty privilege is like the best privilege of life. We will get to that. But just the basic privilege to have a roof over my head, like I said, college education. I was the one that propositioned my dad to, like, get me SAT courses, because I was scheming, and I was like, if you invest in this, then I'll get a scholarship, and then we don't have to pay for college, and then your money will, like, pay for itself. And it happened. That's a privilege. So my goal now is recognizing
to know how
that,
those machinations work.
to know that I have the option of an SAT tutor. I wasn't told we can't afford that. They were told, do you have a recommendation? I was like, sure, I'll just go back to my private school where they're all getting SAT tutors and just have one of them come teach me. It was that simple. Yeah. And I recognize every single day that people that are just like me do not have that privilege. And it's systemic why they don't have that privilege. I was the only brown face. I'm still the only brown face when I go into meetings. I was just at, like, a bunch of meetings last week, and I was like, are y'all serious right now? Like, I'm really the only Black woman in this room, Black person. And I just have a vested interest in mentorship. Like, that is the thing I have found lacking in my life. That is the thing that I think we should be giving back. You have to, like, each one reach one, teach one, because that's the only thing you can take responsibility for.
More time slower.
Each one, reach one, teach one. Because that is the only thing that we have actual control over. We can talk about Gen Z till the cows come home, but until you are actually sitting there talking to one and hearing what their experience is like in this school system that they're living in now, you don't know anything about that generation. Do not presume from a news article that got it so wrong with every other generation to know. you know?
Yeah, and I think
You're inspiring you can do it to the younger people.
Tell them and teach them the importance of teaching the generation that comes after them all of the tricks and all of the slip-ups that have come, so that we don't end up villainizing each other and trying to continually blame one another for the state of the world. Because we're all, unless you're under 18 and you haven't had a chance to vote yet, we're all responsible. So.
Yeah, and what you talking about, like going to the private school, knowing that an SAT tutor is a thing, like I think setting expectations, it's like sort of more of an ephemeral idea than like having food or having water and the other things that we've been talking about. But the fact that our parents, when we are, I don't know, 5, 6 years old, are like, what college are you going to go to?
They're putting it in our heads.
Not, are you going to go to college? Like that level of expectation setting of forming your world and what the possibilities are for your world is so important.
Yeah.
And so I think, I don't know how to solve that beyond actually exposing people to more. The other thing that I would say on a super practical basis, if you're talking about policy stuff, public schools are funded by real estate taxes. And that's bananas, because if you live in a poor area where people have homes that are less expensive so they don't pay as much taxes, less money is going to the schools.
Wow, and then I think about a city like San Francisco where our real estate taxes should be off the Richter, so that means that our education system for public students should be off the Richter as well.
It should be,
It's
and
not.
it's
Spoiler alert.
it's better than in some other places, for
The
sure.
bar is so low in this country for education. It's insane.
But also, that's not an accident.
No.
Like, this stuff doesn't happen by accident. Like, the fact that
The lack of
Texas is so huge, so they buy all these textbooks, so they get to literally write
The history that we
and so
learn
they
across
get
the
to
country.
start calling slaves migrant workers. Like, that shit's really happening, and you're really, like,
Like you're really calling them migrant workers.
like, I lived with a young lady who, this is after college, was talking to me about the War of Northern Aggression. And I was like, what?
Where, is she referring to the Civil War?
She is referring to the Civil War as the War of Northern Aggression. Why? Because she grew up in Carolina. I don't want to get specific because I don't remember. And that's what she was taught. And I remember literally like
Yeah, your whole
process
world.
it.
Yeah, it's a whole. That's a window into her life that
Yeah.
you just got.
And this is a black woman.
And imagine if you learned about the Civil War from the perspective of it was the North and they were just being aggressive.
Yeah.
That's crazy, because you know who's crazy aggressive? Like Southern plantation owners.
I mean, you know, kind of going all over the place, but like, again, it's like, it's about how you frame these conversations and these stories from a very young age.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like it's like a typical like progressive black person to be like, school's important, like read a book, but
It is, and then be mindful of who
is.
the author is. Like, don't just read a book, read who's writing the book. Learn where their perspective is coming from, and learn that everything has been framed. This is, again, going back to like...
But that's the kind of education that you get when teachers are like able
Into
to take a step back and really think about like, we're gonna talk today about media literacy. Like,
Yeah, it's a private school education, yeah, because it's all funded and everyone's paying for their own books.
Then I think it's fair to say that then after we get to this basic physiological needs level that's met, the next level, and that's pretty much the responsibility of the parent to have been literate enough to have decided to have a child only when they were ready to be able to meet that child's basic needs.
Right.
And then after that then
and they
is
have to
the-
anticipate that they ever will be ready. Right? Because I think I can wait to have children because I anticipate a time in my life where I will be in a financial position to make that a wise decision.
Right.
But if there's no light at the end of my tunnel, then what's stopping me from having a kid when I'm 20 versus when I'm 30?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. But
No, that's That's very important. So then as we get to that basic need is met, then I think above that, I think it's safe to say that is this whole literacy of how to be a parent and how to foster a community for a child, how to teach that child into the world. It seems to be controversial to tell people how to be an adult, how to be a parent to a child, right? It seems to be a very controversial thing. But at the same time, it is very important for a parent to not be teaching their child that the earth is flat.
Right.
These are just very important things to be communicating. For example,
Because we've moved on from these conversations.
this is not northern aggression, right? This is not how we talk about history.
Right.
And so that's why this is not a subjective way to explain what has occurred in the world. This is a very objective. There's lots and lots of evidence in one direction, so we've said it is objective now. And so because of that, if a parent is well educated enough to be able to teach their child about these basic understandings of the world, the cosmos, the evolution, their consciousness, their body, their heart, their mind, the way that we've evolved from monkeys through culture into where we are today, if we can at least get to that point together, and then to say, please be open-minded and loving and caring and gentle, and get into longer and more nuanced conversations with people when you're older, and inspire them to make something of their life past just eating and drinking food and stuff like that. I think that can be, we talk about this a lot. We talk about what are those kind of couple principles that a parent can make sure that they try and bring their child up with into the world.
I agree with that in part. I do think, though, for a large portion of the country, especially with like Black and brown people, they are living in that space where there is food insecurity, where they don't have the things that you talked about, but they still can be effective parents. And I would sort of hazard us not to go into a place that can get inadvertently classist if we are saying it's not until you reach this level of financial security that you can then teach your children these things, because the reality is there's smart people everywhere. And there are really capable parents who are teaching their kids the right things in the hood.
Yeah.
That's definitely happening.
That's a very common tale.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Every single area, no matter what socioeconomic status or demographics on the planet, is going to have a kind of slightly different way to upbring a child than in those different principles that they'll be teaching the child. But then these sort of basic fundamental truths, I think, are really crucial for the child to really get I
think that's a fair assumption for people that are making policies that impact whether or not people have access to certain resources, to consider exactly what you're talking about. Odds are, if somebody has their needs met, they will be able to parent well, responsibly, and bring out another productive member of society. I think it's a fair assumption that, anyone doing public policy that impacts people like that should keep in mind.
I mean, for sure, we should be making everybody's life easier. And this idea that life is hard and it should be, I take exception to that. I hate that idea.
Yeah, because I want to go relax at a beach or a park. I don't want to have to worry about where my next food comes from. How do we build a world where the kids can relax and not have to worry about where the food comes from?
Well, and that's the concern that I have with universal basic income. I think it would be great. I would love to live in a world where that were the case.
People will still be creative. They'll still do things in the world.
They'll be more creative.
You think so?
Because they'll have these needs met. You'll have time to think about
There's
things.
a level of, creative output takes energy.
Where do you think the UBI should come from?
How do you mean?
Who should fund it?
Yeah, where does the UBI come from?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would assume from somewhere in our government we can fund it.
There's a bunch of different proposals that are out right now. We've had a bunch on the show, but it's
so
that's an important
the whole system has to change.
That's exactly
dollars
what I
and
was gonna
cents
say.
and one sense of value is important. What something is worth.
Right.
You know, you mentioned earlier about millennials aren't buying diamonds anymore. Good. I don't understand
Yeah.
the fucking value of a diamond.
Someone told us it was valuable.
There is none.
exactly.
There is
So-
none. It's a hallucination. It's a global hallucination. There's many things like that that are
Yeah.
global hallucinations.
But
I
I
like
also
that.
think like if you look in places that have systems that are even approaching that, like everybody likes to hold up Sweden, and like there's other things that are a part of it. Like the transportation doesn't cost as much or
Right.
anything. Like the healthcare is taken care of. Like there's things that make a place ready for universal basic income, and I think we don't have those things.
We also have 315 or 20 now million people, which is a lot more than 5, which
Yeah.
is making it really difficult,
Makes it
to,
really
to
difficult
do this.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gives us a really powerful army, and it makes getting everything else done a lot harder.
I love you two so much. I want you back as soon as possible.
We have so much left to talk about. I know. We should talk about human nature next, because I think all of this would inform our opinions on where we think human nature should be and where we think it is.
Yeah, that's a huge one to unpack.
Interesting.
We,
You know, I love talking about evolution.
Yeah, let's
We're like two pretty nerdy girls. I think I'm more nerdy than you, but
Definitely. Oh my God, you taught me about Ghoul Suite. Yeah. Girl.
that's
But-
like tech nerdy stuff. But yeah,
Is there a difference?
let's talk about it offline.
Let's unpack that.
let's unpack that. You two are amazing. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you
We
for
have
having us.
we have a lot to unpack in our next conversation.
I
today.
know.
Very excited for it.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Yes. Courtney Thomas, Dara, and Wilson, thank you so much from Next Big Thing. The upcoming shows on the 28th.
This Saturday.
You're not
this
going to
Saturday.
ask him at least one simulation question, just one.
Just one.
This one? Okay.
What do you two think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
Oh, flowers. I think they're evidence that God is real.
Oh.
Dara?
That was I'm like paralyzed by how quickly you answered.
Yeah, that was,
The most beautiful thing in the world, I think, is love. I don't think you can see it. Anything that makes me
Oh.
cry on a television show
Ooh, that's love.
is the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like when you watch the Great British Bake Off, and they're like, I finished my muffins early, can I help you? And I'm like, human beings can be good. That's the most
I
beautiful
thought you were
thing.
gonna say like This Is Us or something.
No, that's emotional manipulation.
Oh my God.
That's a different thing. I'm talking about Extreme Makeover Home Edition, a whole community coming together to build a
Eye for
home.
the straight guy. That one gets everybody.
Except for that one episode, which we can talk about. Anyway, so this has turned into
Well,
television, the
well,
most
you
beautiful
t-
thing in the world.
I like how both of you had an addition to what the word was. So people come on and say love or flowers, right? But they don't give the addition. And the addition for you was that is evidence that
God is
real. And for you, it was because you can't see it.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. You can't see it. And so
Yeah.
what exists outside of the three-dimensional flesh vehicle reality that we live in is fascinating. We talk about it on the show a lot. I'm glad that Ron prompted us to do at least one. We have 100 more of these questions. that
be
we-
sure to plug their show as well to get our
Absolutely.
viewers to go check out their
Absolutely.
show.
Yes,
We
we
can
did.
do it again.
We just did. Yeah, the 28th.
We
Yes.
have a show at Piano Fight at 5:30 on Saturday. If you want those details, you can follow us at NBT The Show.
Yeah.
I am also producing 2 shows this weekend. They are comedy storytelling shows. And you can follow me at Dara M. Wilson if you want details on that. And you should come to the shows.
I will be at the show, and you can follow me at It's Olivia Dope. And just check us out on YouTube. Just hit the
Yep.
search bar and type in Next Big Thing with Courtney and Dara.
Boom. I love it. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you guys had a good time, remember to share this content with other people. Give us a like, a comment, a subscribe. If you're not subscribed yet, smash that subscribe button. Go to their channel, smash the subscribe button.
So aggressive.
The northern aggression, guys.
Okay, all right. How about we gently drop a feather on the subscribe button and press it down? Just give it a kiss.
Liberals.
Let's play. Yeah. Drop a snowflake on the subscribe button.
Millennials.
Exactly.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. We greatly appreciate you. Join us on Patreon as well. Help us keep this studio sustainable. We would love that and appreciate it so much. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in. Peace out.
Peace.